about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go,
Hi.
That's kind of goofy. All right, listen.
Anyway.
Thank you. Welcome to the Soul Purpose Lounge.
Yes, welcome to the Soul Purpose Lounge.
Soul Purpose.
We are back.
What is the Soul Purpose Lounge, honey?
The Soul Purpose Lounge, which actually, that's a very good question. So, my brother, Allen Williams, I think was on a show one time, or maybe the show before when we first started going kind of live on Facebook. Suggested that we do like an after set, which was more relaxed. And so he actually was on the first one. We only have one person watching, but that's okay. We think we'll get more people. But that is kind of how
go back and look at these.
They do,
sure, yeah.
but that is how the soul started. First, it was Food for the Soul, and then we decided to change it to Soul Purpose Lounge because it's more of a loungy feel. Where we, after our first show, we grab a cocktail, and then come and have conversations about what we talked about.
And I'm Keith.
It says Keith and Monica right there.
Okay, well, maybe people thought I was Monica.
I'm sure that they did not think that you were Monica.
Anyway, so listen, I want to just take a couple minutes and recap if you missed our show today on anti-racism, and we teased it a little bit before the show that we're going to be talking about anti-racism versus diversity and how come being not racist is not enough. And what about my black friends? I have all these black friends. Doesn't that make me not racist? So we teased this concept, but during the show, we really got into some hardcore definitions. The reason why I wanted to kind of dress myself up a little bit is because I wanted to, create more of an academic platform. But we talked about anti-racism. I think we published a couple of books too.
We did.
How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, who happens to be a FAMU grad.
He is.
And is on the talk show circuit. If anybody out there knows Dr. Kendi, obviously we're Rattlers. We'd love to have him come on to the show. I'd love to chat with him and connect with him as well. And then you were also publishing a book as well. And we're not getting paid for
We're not. So that's which is fine. The Cast, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson, who actually wrote another book, which is upstairs, and I can't remember the name of it. So if anybody that's in our chat room, thank you, Carlene. If anybody knows the name of the first book, it's upstairs. I have it. I haven't finished reading it, but I have her first book. But it's very, very good. Very, very good book.
Yes. And I think we also mentioned, Robin DiAngelo's,
White Fragility.
White Fragility is another book for, this should be recommended reading for all of our listeners. Please like us, share us. The reason why we get thousands of views every week is because you guys, obviously the content is resonating with you and you're deciding to share it with your friends. So please continue to do that, because every time you share, then those individuals share as well.
The content or they just like us.
Or you could just like us. I think that we're likable people as well. But we did talk about anti-racism. We talked about a lot of things. We defined racism as a power construct. We just defined racism as a system of policies and beliefs and attitudes that have the impact of having disparate treatment against a particular group. Mm-hmm. We disagreed a little bit on whether or not that disparate group could be black or white or something else, because I believe that, black people can be racist, Middle Eastern people can be racist, Asian people can be racist, et cetera, et cetera. But it just depends on the power construct. But we talked about a lot of different terms, though, including defining anti-racism. I want to do that real quick. Talk about anti-racism from a definition, and then I would love for Monica to share with us some additional definitions in this space around intersectionality and microaggression. Anti-racism. So if we believe that and accept that racism is a system of beliefs and policies that create attitudes and that propagate racist ideas that eventually have the ultimate aim of putting one race over another, then anti-racism is going to have to be systems of things that deliberately dismantle that system and that institution, right? So that's important for us, those of us who call ourselves diversity professionals, or who do diversity training or put together diversity committees, et cetera. It's important that we understand the differences, because what's happening right now is a reckoning in this country. And what's causing that? Why are we at this place?
COVID. It's funny. I actually had this conversation with my mom, and I believe as a Christian, and I'm not proselytizing. I always get that, and when I speak, I always get my tongue jumbled on that. So I'm not proselytizing, but as a Christian, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I don't think anything's by chance or coincidence, right? And so this COVID happened. We were locked down. Ahmaud Arbery happened right after COVID. Then George Floyd happened, and then Breonna Taylor happened either after or in the midst of all of that. And people are at home, specifically with George Floyd, and saw with the videotape this man take his last breath with this cop's knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And so I think COVID happening, us being locked in, the reckoning is happening because not just us, Black people, are saying once again, here we go. But white folks who were locked in, and not necessarily white folks who would necessarily have consider themselves allies or would have been vocal in the past, saw what we've been talking about. And I think that's why we are here. And some
of those same white people, I think, and again, this is me giving them credit, are asking the questions. Okay, well, we've been listening to you guys. We've been considering ourselves allies. We've been not participating in racist behavior. What can we actually do to help eradicate racism? And I didn't get into a whole lot of this in the first show, but I think part of why we are here is because, and I will share just a personal testimony from my first wife, from my first marriage, I should say. And we raised 2 daughters. We gonna have a whole nother show on marriage and we're gonna talk about that second marriage. But we decided to move to an area in Tampa called New Tampa, which is not an affluent area. There's some affluent people there, but we decided to move to a specific area because it was going to give us a better opportunity to raise the kids in a school district and those kind of things. So I don't know if it was intentional, but I think our assumption was subconsciously we're going to move to an area that's probably not going to be a lot of Black people. It's probably going to be more white people. So we moved to this neighborhood, and as it turns out, most of the kids in the neighborhood, and frankly, most of the people who lived in the house, bought the houses around us, were people of either Indian or Pakistani or Asian descent, and some white people. So, and then very few Black people. And so what we found over time was that the assimilation started to take place, and the kids that would come over our house were kids that necessarily looked like our daughters. And so we started going, wow. So if you're going to go spend a night at somebody's house, or if you're going to go and play with somebody, or if you're going to have kids over to watch TV or play games or whatever, there's a good possibility those kids don't look like that. And so when we see Indian people being treated in the streets, if police are coming to our neighborhood and singling out Indian people and harassing them, I can't in good conscience then come back to my kids and say, well, look, honey, that's their problem. That's not our problem. You need to let them worry about that. So it becomes a different dynamic when it hits home. Yeah. White people have little Black and brown kids in their homes that play. Their kids are playing soccer together. Their kids are go play at the Y together. Their kids are doing sleepovers together. So there are white people who go, wait a minute, we've been on the sidelines all this. Yeah. All this is going on. Maybe we should say, no, this is wrong. This is it's unfortunate that many years it's been happening that it took for it to happen. I think it was just kind of a culmination of lots of different things. We have somebody in office and has been in office since 2016 that fans the flames. He's a fearmonger. He's a fearmonger and fans the flames of racism. His whole "Make America Great Again" is a dog whistle for those white folks who feel victimized by Black and brown people elevating in this country. So that's first. Yeah. And then you have Charlottesville and all these other different things that are happening. And then COVID hit, everybody's locked in. Yeah. And now you see what we've been talking about forever. I do have a question though. This is kind of
kind of on topic, off topic to kind of follow up. So the girls would spend the night at their friends' houses. Would those same non-Black folks spend the night at your house? Would the parents allow them to spend the night at your house?
No. So we clearly did see, even then, and even during that part, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember having a conversation with one of my daughters, like, well, I've invited so-and-so to spend the night with us, and apparently maybe, her mom doesn't feel comfortable or whatever, but she's saying no, but then I do spend the night over there. And so that was really kind of one of the early conversations that I had to have with them around, well, that's because sometimes it's not necessarily all the same. It's not equal. It's not, it's not the same as you spending the night is not the same as them spending the night here. And that gets to, when we talk about theoretically, the difference between those segregationists and those assimilationists. Assimilationists believe as long as you just treat everybody the same, then the outcomes will be the same. As long as Black people continue to do what I could do, which is get a college education, go to work and be professionals, and you have these little Black and brown kids as your offspring, it's still going to, it eventually is going to fix everything.
You all are the okay Black people.
You're the okay ones. And the reality is, no, that's not, that didn't fix the racism part of it.
I find it interesting because I don't know. I think I've talked about this before. Growing up, I didn't have, my brother did because he played sports. When I went to all Black high school, I didn't have white friends coming to my house. And I don't remember, frankly, very many white folks coming to the house to eat at our house, sit at our table for dinner. My parents would go out with white couples and go out with white people, but I don't ever have any recollection of anybody coming to the house. And I know my parents just didn't let us spend the night over anybody's house, period, regardless of who it was. But I know I don't know if I would feel comfortable. I want my son to have a United Nations of friends, right? Because I think that's kind of what helps bridge the divide. I want him to be proud of who he is and raise him to be a proud Black man. You're not better than anybody, but nobody's better than you. Is what I'm teaching him, and what we're teaching him. But I don't know how I would feel if he was invited over and spend the night at a little white boy's house, but the little white boy couldn't come spend the night.
I can tell you how you'd feel.
I take it back. I know how I would feel. Yeah. I would have to take a position that, well, if he can't come over here, you can't go back over there and spend the night. He's welcome to come play over here, and you're welcome to play over there. But he has to feel comfortable coming over here, just like I feel comfortable enough sending you over there. So I brought that up, and I wanted to ask a question.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you brought that up, because which is why I believe that it is time for us to start having these conversations. You just made the point. You want your son, you want your child to have United Nations approach to how they make friends.
Right.
What we have learned over time is that the reason why representation and diversity doesn't fix racism is because we don't call out racism for what it is. We don't put it in its proper historical context, and we don't challenge the power structure to deal with their own racist behaviors that contribute to the institution.
Okay.
And that is the reason why I'm so passionate about this subject. Decided to go out on a limb. I'm not saying anything on our show, on either of our platforms, that I would not share publicly with people who are not people of color. But it is one of those areas where, oh my gosh, what if people start looking at you differently because you're talking about that race stuff? And that makes us uncomfortable. What if that has some personal consequences or professional consequences for us? And that is a part of the fear that we have to eradicate. We have to stop being afraid of calling it what it is, because we don't want white people to believe that the problem is that they are all evil. The problem is that they are Nazi, white supremacy, or Nazi sympathizers. That they are white supremacists. They're not Christians because they contributed to this ongoing institutionalized racism. That means that they can't be Christians. So no, we want to continue to talk about this. We want to talk about it in such a manner, professional manner, that people will call us and they will start to ask us, hey, can you come and help teach this to us?
And what's so funny that you say that when you talk about racism, there's this automatic repulsion from white people. You know, you're not talking about me.
Not talking about me.
I'm not included in that. But the reverse, when some white people are talking about Black folks, we all, particularly when it's a negative,
Right.
we all get lumped into the same. They make exceptions. So Black people are this, except you, Keith, because you know you're XYZ, or Black people are this, except you, Monica, because you're XYZ. There is some. You are okay, and we approve of you because you for some
assimilated.
reason I don't think I assimilate. I guess that's not true.
But
I guess I have to.
that's how they're processing it. Is that the assimilationists believe that if all Black people can just be like you two guys, it would start to erase the problems associated
without
with
addressing what the problems
with
are.
racism.
Without addressing what the problems are.
Without addressing what the problem is, and the problem is the racist mentality. The problem is that there's something bad about the other Black people. There's something bad about the other Hispanic people. There's something bad about the people in the same category.
So it goes back to class.
It goes back to class.
Got it. See.
Anyway, hey, but there are a couple of terms I do want to, because I don't want us to get out of here without. We said we were going to try to hit all of the terms, and we did hit a lot of them. Look at the show, please. One of them is a term called intersectionality, which I know you've done some work in that space, and the other one is the term of microaggression. We've heard that, and I've heard it come from you over the course of the past few days. So, in light of the fact that our hearts are heavy today because of what?
So somebody, Carlene, thank you very much for the compliment. This pearl collar, yesterday, we were coming home from dinner, and I got my cousin, Keon, who's an attorney, sent a text message saying that Ginsburg passed.
Justice Ginsburg.
Well, I'm telling you what the text said. The text message said Ginsburg passed. And it took a minute for it to click to me, and I screamed in the car. He was like, "What is going on?" And I did a search, and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed yesterday, and she was known for wearing on top of her robes. She was known for wearing beautiful collars on top of her robe. Many had pearls on them, and so this I wore today in honor of her. So it was I did a quick Facebook Live just because it had so many emotions yesterday, reflecting on her life, how important she was for women lawyers specifically, but just equality and justice in this country. And this morning I woke up early and posted some things about her, and posted this really lengthy Facebook post about some of her dissents. And one of the major dissents most recently was in Shelby County v. Holder, which is the Supreme Court case that gutted. It's known for gutting the Voting Rights Act, specifically Section 5, which Section 5 said that the federal government would before certain history of disparate impact.
Yes.
Implementing policies that had a disparate impact on minority voters. They were racist policies. Let's just be clear. But they had to get pre-clearance from the Department of Justice about these policies, or about these policies that implemented them. And the Supreme Court in Shelby County versus Holder, Eric Holder being the Attorney General at the time, which is why his name is on that case, unfortunately. Chief Justice Roberts essentially said that the statistical information they used when the Voting Rights Act was enacted, when Congress reviewed it, was in the 1960s, and things were bad. Poll tax, all the different things that we learned about in history in terms of what the government, these states, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, just a list of southern states, the things that they implemented to make it more difficult and challenging for Black folks to vote. And so because they did those things, these counties and these states implemented those laws and policies to make it more difficult for Black folks to vote, they needed to get clearance from the federal government under the Voting Rights Act to ensure that Black folks had equal access to the polls and to the voting, to their right to vote. And so Shelby County implemented, as you've seen, since Shelby County v. Holder, since that case, we've seen firsthand what the Republicans are doing and Republican-led states are doing to make it more difficult for Black people to vote. And they're not quiet about it. And the reason they're not quiet about it, and the reason it's so bold, and the reason they're emboldened is because of Shelby County v. Holder and Justice Ginsburg's dissent. I highly recommend people read it. I posted on my Facebook page, and I can post it in the Sole Purpose page. I've posted an excerpt, but the excerpt is still long, but her dissent is stinging. And what she does is she chastises the majority and says that you all are ignoring all of these statistics that are still present. It's not in your face racism. It's not in your face legislation that they're passing that specifically says, no, we're going to make you count jelly beans. That's not it. What they're doing are other things. They're redrafting, they're redesigning districts. Florida right now, there's a constitutional amendment, Amendment 3, vote no, constitutional amendment that they're looking to pass that instead of primary states in certain districts, instead of primaries in certain districts, they're going to lump everybody in the same pool. And if you lump everybody in the same pool in a district that's majority Black, that means Republicans and Democrats can get in the race. Republicans may raise more money. It's going to dilute the vote, which means that anybody that is Black that wants to run for office in a predominantly Black district is not going to get elected.
And the sad part about that is that it's one of the workarounds that happened many, many years ago when after Blacks got the right to vote, and we looked at the numbers because of the representation numbers. They started drawing voting districts, and they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to start creating these voting districts that's to ensure that there's going to be at least one Black city councilman, at least one Black county commissioner, at least one Black. And so that was a workaround that was done to right past wrongs, ultimately having the effect of, well, that's probably just going to be the only one. That's probably going to be the only Black this, the only Black that. And so again, it didn't move the needle on anything. It just gave us a seat at the table.
And then the other challenge, and so that's why when you see Stacey Abrams and all these people who advocate, Michelle Obama, with the When We All Vote initiatives, all these initiatives encouraging people to register, encouraging people to vote early, is because the Voting Rights Act is there, but it is a shell of its former self. It's been dismantled. It's not even being dismantled. It has been dismantled. It's there in theory, but in terms of the meat of it, Shelby v. Holder snatched the meat from the Voting Rights Act, which is why you see all of these tactics that these states. So this Amendment 4 and all this happening with Florida and felons, the reason that's able to happen is because the Supreme Court's decision essentially supports the ability for it to happen. States make their own rules.
If a state wanted to come up with a poll tax to stop Black folks,
probably not that extreme, but probably not that extreme. But in effect, what the Republican legislature has done in Florida is they have implemented what is in effect a poll tax. The amendment was very clear. They could have challenged the amendment before it got on the ballot last election cycle, and they didn't do that. And what they're doing is, because perhaps they didn't think it was going to be overwhelmingly passed, but what they've done now is they've said, in order, felon, for you to have your rights restored, you got to pay all of your restitution, which includes court fees, which if you are a felon, you can't get a job, you can't get any money to pay back your court fines. And so it is in effect a poll tax, but anyway, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote a dissent in that case, and I recommend that you all read it. It's biting. She talks about the hubris. She goes through the history of voting in this country and how, why the Voting Rights Act in that particular section were so crucial in ensuring that Black folks had equal access to the ballot, and what we're seeing as a result, what we are seeing happening is exactly what she said would happen.
And how long ago was that decision?
I think it was 2016.
See, and herein lies the rub. For those who are still feeling some kind of way about hearing the term white supremacy and white privilege,
2013,
feeling like Don't be, don't characterize me as Hitler, and don't characterize me as these KKK riding through burning crosses in people's yards. Don't characterize me as that. And this, we're not talking 50 years ago. We're not talking 100 years ago. We're talking today. It's still happening today. Voting rights are under attack again today. The bottom line impact of these decisions that are being passed down, including the executive order just from last week, that we can't teach diversity training, can't teach anti-racism training because it further divides us. Well, nothing has further divided us as a country than continuing to gloss over the reality as to why all of these disparities still exist. And the reason why these disparities still exist is because more than the KKK have contributed to the maintenance of white supremacy and white.
And so I want to clarify real quick. I made a mistake. So Shelby v. Holder, what was struck down, there were two sections that were challenged. Section 5, which requires certain states and local governments to get federal pre-clearance before implementing any changes to voting laws, as I said. But the other section that I didn't mention was Section 4B, which contains a formula that that determines which jurisdictions are subject. And so it's a whole formula they put together. And so what Ginsburg does in her dissent is she goes to the formula. So they gutted, when they said they gutted it, they still have to get pre-clearance, but there's no formula. So 4B is gone. And so it inevitably leaves Section 5 without any teeth. So at any rate, what you're seeing now is a result of that decision. And so aside from the Shelby v. Holder case, if you just there's going to be a documentary, I think a special on MSNBC tonight about RBG. I would encourage people to read it. And so if you see your lawyer friends and you read their Facebook post and you pray for them, pray for the lawyers. But also I would share with you that while people have been pushing voting and explaining and expressing how important voting is and how important this particular election is, it was before, but it definitely is now. If you are believe in reproductive rights, or you're a man that supports reproductive rights for women, women's womb, that graphic, but women's wombs are on the ballot in November. Equal protection for LGBT folks are on, the LGBTQ community is on the ballot. Even though Brown v. Board of Education has been enacted since 1954, that's on the ballot. So equality is on the ballot. And that's not hyperbole, real, because if Trump is able to get one of his appointees on the Supreme Court, that shifts the balance of power to 6 conservative, 3 or 4 of whom are extremely conservative, 6-3, and so Roe v. Wade is gone,
including the Black justice. So listen. Anyway, so what are the terms? Intersectionality.
Thank you for letting me vent.
Sure.
For a few minutes.
Intersectionality. What is that?
I don't think we talked about microaggressions. I actually experienced one. So that's not what you asked me, but microaggressions and intersectionality were the 2 terms that we didn't get a chance to talk about in the main show. Microaggressions are statements, actions. They don't really focus, that aren't really in your face aggressiveness based on your race or gender or any other ethnicity or racism or race, but it's the subtle things. It's like a perfect microaggression that I've experienced frequently is I'm in a lobby of the courthouse outside of a judge's chambers waiting for a hearing, and opposing counsel who's never met me before comes up and makes the assumption that I'm the court reporter. Or you're in Target.
Well, and they will say something like, "Oh, hi, how are you, the court reporter?" Yes,
correct. Yeah. Correct. Or if you're in Target and you are shopping, I'm not wearing a red shirt, but someone comes up to you and says, "Do you know where, can you tell me where such and such is located? I don't work here." Nothing wrong with working at Target, but you're making an assumption that I'm working at Target simply for whatever reason.
Because we are disproportionately represented in the service industry.
Well, I mean, So that's a microaggression. It's subtle. It's subtle comments, actions that are discriminatory in nature based on someone's race or ethnicity.
And can I just say, to interject too, because that was a good example. Because we are disproportionately represented in the service industry, One of those things that might suggest that you are participating in a racist construct is the assumption that when you see a person of color, that they're probably, they're probably there for the help. They're probably there for the. And so if you made that mistake, it doesn't make you a horrific sympathizer. It just means that you have propagated the same racist ideas that have disproportionately affected our psyche. We don't want to be treated like we're in the service industry if we're not in the service. We don't want to be treated like we're the help if we're not necessarily the help. And so what anti-racism, I know I'm hijacking my question that I asked you. What anti-racist teaching tells us is to stop, take a moment, take inventory, and treat the individual as if they're not what you think they are.
You experienced a microaggression. We were at a function for my job, and we were there was a bar there, and I remember being very irritated after this. We're at a bar. My husband is behind the bar, making himself a drink, and then someone comes up and says, "Yeah, I'd like a red wine or whatever." And Keith is pretty diplomatic. I jumped in. I said, "He's not the bartender. He's not the bartender." He says, "Oh, I'm sorry." Keith is like, "It's not a problem, man. I'll make your drink for you." So I wouldn't have made the drink, and I told Keith that he'd had to make that damn drink himself. But so that was a microaggression that happened probably a couple years ago. But that was the question you asked me.
Yes.
So intersectionality. So intersection, I've actually written a magazine article on this and done some training on this, but intersectionality is a concept that was first introduced by critical race theory professor Kimberly Crenshaw. And what intersectionality talks about is how at the intersection of race and gender, you find Black women, and how the employment laws, specifically Title VII, which was enacted to ensure that people were not voted against in employment based on race, gender, race, gender, national origin, color, sex. It's a whole list of protected categories which Title VII covers. Title VII does not protect Black women specifically because of their race and their gender, and you can be discriminated against because you're a Black woman, but the law does not recognize that. And the case that I talked a little bit about this on the show that I was on last night. The court case that she, in her paper, when she talks about intersectionality, that she analyzes is, and I forgot the plaintiff's name. It was a General Motors case. It was a Black woman who sued General Motors, saying that they were denied advancement opportunities and promotions because they were Black women. And what the court essentially said is you can't have it both ways. You can either say that you were discriminated against based on your race, or you were discriminated against because you're a woman, but the law doesn't recognize discrimination at the intersection. And because there are situations, as I'm sure many Black women can attest to, where you absolutely are discriminated against on the basis of being a Black woman, the law doesn't protect you in that space. And so she in her paper, she analyzes it very, very well. So it's a really great paper, but she's also done some speaking engagements, and she talks about how intersectionality impacts other areas. Example, in the most recent social justice space that we're in with the killing of unarmed Black men and women, when the media talks about it, until here recently with Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland as well. But there's a TED Talk that she does, and she reads this list of names of people who have been unarmed people who have been murdered by cops. And she reads this list of people, just men. And what she says, as an exercise, she says, if you've heard of these names, I want you to remain standing. If you haven't heard these names, I want you to sit down. So she starts reading these names of men, and people are, still standing. Then she starts reading names of women who have also been killed by unarmed women who've been killed by cops. There's probably only 2 people standing at the end of that exercise. And so her point was that in the media, when you're talking about this conversations about social justice and police interactions and police brutality, Black women tend to get lost in that conversation, and our situations tend to get ignored in that space because of intersectionality. So in the employment law context, it's never really talked about. It's something I do talk about when I do my diversity trainings, is because the law, it impacts Black women, because if I feel I've been discriminated against because I'm a Black woman, the law doesn't recognize it. So I have no redress. I have no recourse. I can't do anything, because as an employment lawyer that represents management, my argument will be, well, no, you couldn't have. If there's a Black man that's in your same position, that negates your discrimination lawsuit, because my argument is, well, you couldn't have been discriminated against because you were Black, because there's a Black man in that same role that reports to the same supervisor, and he was not negatively impacted. Conversely, you can't sue if you're a woman if there's another white woman there, because the argument on my side is you couldn't have been discriminated against because of your gender, because there's a white woman who's similarly situated, same position, same supervisor, who was treated exactly the same. And so you very well could have been treated differently because you were Black and a woman, but the law, as I just explained, doesn't support it. So it's a concept that not very many people in the DIE space talk about, probably because it doesn't impact them. It impacts me on a personal level, because I recognize it and I see that. But I highly recommend folks read her article on intersectionality. If you see a TED Talk about her, I have not had the opportunity to actually hear her speak, and I would love to hear her speak, but her TED Talk is really good. So that's intersectionality.
Well, I certainly appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
And we need to, those of us who are in this space, we need to feel comfortable continuing to educate, because I do believe that we are seeing a reckoning of sorts in our country, and we are seeing companies, especially, and organizations, being a lot more deliberate around what can we do, not just to increase the diversity or push the diversity conversation, but what can we do to actually start to end racism? I do want to touch on a few things. I know we talked about some of these things at the end of our show, but I do think it's important for us to start making some distinctions between, and we need to talk about HBCUs, right? So this is going to be kind of a segue into that. But talking about some of the distinctions between things that you can do to help with diversity versus things that you can do to create policies that are intentionally anti-racist and dismantle past racism. One of those things, obviously, is affirmative action. That's the one that people know the best. And as vilified as affirmative action is, all affirmative action was supposed to be was identify numerical representations of local job market, local labor market, and say that your workforce should look like that, right? So as long as you were going to write a plan to try to address those past wrongs, then that is an anti-racist policy, because we know that there's been disparities in the way people have been discriminated against if they were equally qualified for jobs. Heck, even if they were unequally qualified for jobs, if a white person has 10 years experience and a Black person has 8 years experience, the white person who got hired based on their experience wasn't wrong from a affirmative action perspective, but from a looking at past historical disparity between how people were hired into jobs, it still meant the brother didn't get a job. Well, it was going to contribute to the economic wealth gap.
Well, the pushback for affirmative action from the other side is that the theory is, which is untrue, is that you are allowing someone who is not qualified to take a position from someone that is qualified, which is just fundamentally not true, and that wasn't the basis for it. And I think if you think about it, affirmative action, there's all types of affirmative action. So when you're talking about admissions to schools, there's folks from Harvard that get accepted necessarily because they're the most qualified student, because their dad gave $100 million to the university.
That is the white privilege,
and that is the history.
Racism
that is true affirmative action.
Right.
That still happens. That you have folks that have access to resources, not because they're the most qualified person, not because they are the best person for the job, not because they fit some need of a particular organization, but because they know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and someone wrote a big fat check and said, okay, well, I'm going to give you a chance. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is not about trying to make white people feel bad about white privilege. It's about trying to make everyone acknowledge that it exists and do it in a non-emotional way. My roommate in college, whom I love to this day, who happened to be white, whom I love, his grandfather was a vice president of a bank where my grandfather was a janitor. So that didn't make me worse than him or him better than me or anything like that. It just meant that he was probably generationally going to have certain advantages.
He was going to.
And he did have advantages that I did not have. And it was all love between us. But if we were having this conversation in an open forum, it would have to be something that he would have to acknowledge. Yes, I understand that I have gained certain advantages because of my race. So anyway,
I missed real quick. Apparently, I didn't see Joe Biden's his town hall meeting in CNN, but apparently he acknowledged that he acknowledged that there were some benefits. He recognized there were some benefits that he received from being a white man.
So we're trying to give y'all nuggets, and we're doing this free of charge, even though you should be paying us. Trying to give y'all nuggets. These are examples of anti-racist things that you can do to help start to erase and eradicate and break down and dismantle racism. One is there's these things called diversity mission statements and value statements that you come up with and you write. So, we believe that all people are created equal and that we're going to, constantly seek to try to, treat everybody the same. Is not an anti-racist statement. An anti-racist statement is an actual anti-racist statement. I think you made some allusion to that.
Yeah.
And somebody, your school is coming up with an anti-racist vision.
So I attended University of Florida for law school. And if anybody knows anything about University of Florida Law School, it has a pretty sordid racist history. And I don't shy away from it. I'm honest about it. I was honest about it when I was there. I'm honest about it now. That doesn't mean I don't love my school. I do, but it has its fair share of problems and still has challenges. But to its credit, and the law school was just as bad. So to its credit, after I think the push from the Boston students, so kudos to the Black Law Students Association at the University of Florida Levin College of Law for always, even when I was there, standing at the head and at the forefront of pushing social issues and agendas on the law school campus, because when you're dealing with folks that are going to be your colleagues, that's not always a comfortable place to be in, but kudos to the Black Law Students Association for doing it. But after George Floyd, there was a push to, we're having everybody's having these conversations about anti-racism and diversity and what can we do to improve the environments in our respective organizations. And an anti-racist statement was drawn up by the dean. And I think there was probably some help from students and administrators and some other folks, law professors on campus. Racist statement that I don't specifically remember what it said, but I was considering where I know UF has been, I was actually very impressed about the fact that they even did it, right? So it's definitely a step in the right direction. We got a long way to go. You still have buildings on UF's campus that are named after folks that didn't want Black folks there. That's a whole nother separate 30-minute conversation that I could have on this.
But it's another little nugget for you, free nugget.
But
change the names of the buildings of people who were people who were devout racists.
Segregationists.
And segregationists.
And unapologetic.
Change the names of those buildings. That is anti-racist behavior.
Yes.
And that says that I'm not supporting racism.
Right.
I'm supporting something other than racism.
So that happened. And then fast forward here at the last 2 or 3 weeks, University of Florida has done something that I didn't think I'd ever see. They, under the leadership and the push of Yolanda Cash-Jackson, who's a personal friend and mentor of mine and my family and several other Black lawyers, she, under her leadership, was able to create this HBCU initiative, was able to have it endowed, I think it's over $1 million, with the help of Mr. Culverson. I forget, his father was the former owner of the Tampa Bay Bucks. Culverhouse. So it was her idea, an HBCU initiative. The endowment's now over $1 million, and the it's going to enable HBCU scholars to attend University of Florida free of charge for their entire law school career, which is huge.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, in terms of this anti-racism space, that to me is an affirmative step by an institution that has a history of not embracing Black people and Black students, doing what they can it's a step in the right direction. Correct. Right? To be more inclusive, to understand that there are talented Black students at HBCUs that can add value to the University of Florida campus and Gator Nation, who can draw benefit from University of Florida and a University of Florida education. And so I'm excited about what this means for University of Florida in terms of its diversity numbers, and being able to assist the University of Florida any way I can to reach out to HBCU students and encourage them to join Gator Nation. Now, I say that being also a Rattler at the same time, but I think that the initiative is phenomenal. So kudos to University of Florida.
And another example and another nugget for y'all for free of charge. anything seriously, anything that's done to support historically Black colleges and universities is an anti-racist behavior. Not anything. I take it back. But significant efforts and deliberate efforts to further the mission of historically Black colleges and universities is anti-racist behavior. Why? Because historically Black colleges and universities, despite why they were devised in the first place, have for the last 100+ years had the mission of taking Black and brown kids who would not otherwise receive an opportunity for higher education elsewhere, taking those same kids and providing a college education for them.
A phenomenal college education.
And then when you look at the data, if you were just sending kids to school for them to fail in life, then it would not be, and it wouldn't help move the needle. But if you look at the data, graduates of historically Black colleges and universities, including Monica and I, graduates do better. They actually do better. They outperform. They overperform. The statistics are actually. I know that we got some minutes left, but I wanted to kind of segue the HBCU piece because my lovely wife has engineered and authored a special initiative that we may as well take this opportunity to tease.
As well. So I'm going to hit this video first, but this is the website. So let me back up for a second.
You can show a video?
I'm going to show a video, but I'm going to do this build up first. So Keith and I both are HBCU graduates of Florida A&M University. And we have talked since we've been doing this show about dedicating some time to HBCUs and talking about the importance of HBCUs. I think both of us would say without any hesitation that going to an HBCU, specifically A&M, changed our life, yep. Right? Not that I think both of us I think we're going to be successful anyway, but there's something different and special about having attended a historically Black college and university. And so we know how much it benefited us. And so what we have done consistently is we have encouraged young people who we mentor to attend an HBCU. We obviously are lean towards Florida A&M, but any HBCU, frankly, I actually got a call from Jeremiah this week and we talked Nichols for a long time. Yeah. So one of our mentees is now doing very well at Florida A&M. So we wanted to have conversations about the importance of HBCUs. And so God put it in my spirit. We can't do homecoming this year. We can't go. We spend a lot of money. We can't do it in person. You just spend a lot of money going to homecoming where you have the ability to kind of engage with your classmates and just come home to your university that gave you so much and also spend a little money.
Yeah.
And so God placed on my heart to do a homecoming 2020 challenge where we would invite HBCU alum to come on our show the first hour and pub up and boost up your alma mater. And then the second hour, which is this hour, would be all about raising money for your institution. We're not getting paid for this. This is not something that we're getting any benefit from other than encouraging, number one, highlighting HBCUs and talking about the importance of HBCUs. And at the same time, encouraging alumni and other people to give back to HBCUs. They're so vitally important in our community.
So let me help with the hype.
Go ahead, help with the hype, because that was long.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're going to shout out all of these rivalries out there. Grambling University, is it Grambling State or Grambling? I don't even know. We don't follow y'all like that. Okay, so there's Grambling and Southern. There's Tennessee State. There's Jackson State. There's Bethune-Cookman, obviously our rival school. All of y'all, we're calling all of y'all out because we want you to participate in this. It's a free opportunity. Again, our platform is viewed by thousands of people every week, which we're really blessed by. We really appreciate it. So please continue to share and like. But it's just an opportunity to get your mission and your message out there and share some of the traditions of homecoming rivalries or your rivals in general. But sharing some of the traditions. We have more information forthcoming, but we kick it off next week. Are you ready to tell people? I'm gonna
tell, but let me play the video first.
We're gonna play a video.
Play it first. Okay, so give me a second. We're gonna play this video. So
I'm gonna give you
this special announcement. Homecoming 2020 Challenge. I'm gonna show you the website. Go here, hc2020challenge.com. If you are an alum of an HBCU and you want to be on our show, to pub up your HBCU and to give back to your institution, visit hc2020challenge.com to sign up and show this little video. We'll be right back.
It's the Legion, baby. HBCUs, 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 HBCUs. I was raised in the valley, but educated up on the hill. Learn to higher my thoughts, now my thoughts lower all my bills. My mind is working, black degree, yeah, it's working. Came a long way from the uncertain, now I'm sure to thank God for the excursion. Now I got the ability to increase my earnings, and I don't have to do what I used to. Used to be one to take L's, now due to the tax bracket, it's a fact that we see W-2s, imagine that. We see W-2s, imagine that. Now let me get back to the fact that we didn't have access from no schools, now we're on the atlas. Black grads, we have class, we can discuss it, just don't try to change the subject. Like a cold drink without Q, no we're not done yet. This is black success, and guess what? We're up now, and we're up next. Hey, you know what, we'll watch us after 4. Like good news, so we're so good, they want some more. Like good food, look at where we are and where we came. Now we all prove that we own what's only right. We love our all black schools. HBCUs, HBCUs, HBCUs.
Yay! So visit hc2020challenge.com.
Okay.
So we are the challenge, homecoming, hc2020challenge.com. We are going to kick this off in beginning in October. We're going to have a full month of just discussing HBCUs. With my prayer, we're going to keep it. I think we're going to have HBCUs every week. I'm going to keep that in prayer. Yep. But we are kicking off our HC 2020 challenge next week. And we will be having on our 11 o'clock show, Dr. Larry Robinson, who is the president of our alma mater, Florida A&M University. So I am super excited. Dr. Robinson will be with us at 11 o'clock and joined by the president of our National Alumni Association, Colonel Greg Clark, and the, I think, assistant chair of our foundation board, Lisa LeBou, and maybe the chair, Jamal Gibson. So, but we are excited. Our 11 o'clock show is going to be Rattler heavy, but that's how we're going to kick off our Homecoming 2020 challenge. And I am challenging Howard, Hampton, Tennessee State, Jackson, Alcorn, Spelman, Morehouse, Bethune-Cookman, Virginia State. If you are an alumni of an HBCU, the Rattlers usually win anyway. So the goal is to raise money, right? We want the challenge is whoever raises the most money at the end of October will win the HC 2020 challenge. And so we are putting as Rattlers a challenge out to alumni of every other university to get your alumni. If y'all want to be on the show, contact us. Come on the show. Give you a space to talk trash about your university. Yep. And then after the second hour to raise some funds for your university. So it really is a win-win. Y'all can talk trash first hour and we won't intervene unless a little bit. And then the second hour is all about raising money. So homecoming2020challenge.com. Go on the website, sign up. If you want to be on our show on the 11 o'clock hour beginning October 3rd, let us know and we'll coordinate with you. But I'm excited. That's it.
You sound excited.
I am. I'm tired because it's taking a lot of work to do it. No, it is. But I'm hoping that more people sign up. I'm already in communication with a couple of other schools. But Dr. Robinson will be with us on 11 o'clock next week. Yeah. Well,
I'm thrilled to be able to use this platform to do some good and to feed into our narrative, which is what kind of things can we do? What kind of things can you do to help eradicate the effects of systemic racism? One of them is helping to support HBCUs. So I'm thrilled. I do want to close our show out on time today. Excuse me, because we have some other family obligations. But just to recap, there is a difference, folks, friends. There is a difference between just diversity and the diversity committee and the diversity Black History Month celebration and all of these symbolic things. There's a difference between that and true anti-racism behavior. And I just want to encourage everyone, don't get sucked into all of the cutesy kind of what I call distraction type of things. Like social responsibility is another one that's very, very popular. That doesn't mean anything's wrong with corporate social responsibility. It was corporate social responsibility was just created to just try to help, bring into the umbrella of environment. Let's fix the environment and let's fix the whatever else. But at the end of the day, this is about we want to make sure you stay focused on anti-racism.
I just touched his leg which he does me all the time when he's talking too hard. He's talking too hard because we got to wrap up at 1:30.
I'm passionate about this subject.
You are.
So at Soul Purpose Show, at Soul Purpose Show.
Yes.
On Facebook Live, at Soul Purpose Show YouTube.
Correct.
And
HC2020challenge.com. Sign up. Thank you.
And we got to do some advertising on In Touch News Radio too. Heard all over the world.
So, we thank you all. We will see you all next week. Tune in at 11 o'clock and then again at 12:30. And you all have a phenomenal weekend.
Stay safe.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe.